So we want to talk about the different aspects of going to market and what the different nuances are all about. So I'll start with Walker. Can you describe and kind of compare the different product call processes in each provinces? Because I think a lot of us here are maybe in certain provinces and not all, and I think you guys are quite a bit versed. So can you kind of just go through a little bit how that all goes and who you like dealing with and who you don't like dealing with? Because I'm from New Brunswick, by the way, and I always get the shaft in New Brunswick, so I'm looking forward to this answer.
We're still having a hard time with New Brunswick, but getting there. So we are based in BC, and we wanted to treat BC kind of like our home turf, our territory, and we want to establish ourselves here first, and that's what we did. Testing, better?
Perfect.
Thank you. So yeah, we brought our products to Ontario after BC, and then Manitoba, Saskatchewan. We just got into Nova Scotia recently, and so in the last year or so, we've gotten really familiar with the different product call processes, and we're noticing that there is no best in class. But there are best-in-class policies and best-in-class processes. And I'll give you a really interesting example. I was in Nova Scotia just last week. We launched some product there recently, and they do something that is extremely different than what we've experienced with every other provincial board, and that is when we applied for them to take a product from us, our Rainbow Driver in this case, they said, sure, send us a sample. We're like, wait, what? What do you mean a sample? As in, no, send us a bag of your weed, we're going to open the weed, we're going to look at it, and based on what we determine there, we will choose whether or not to carry your product. And we thought, wow, if every other board did this, we could get all the SKUs that we wanted kind of thing. And so that's something that really stood out in the Nova Scotia process, but there's also other things that were more limiting there. Ontario, for example, we have about a 6-month lead time from our original submission to when the product actually gets to market. So there are a variety of kind of limitations, but also like BC, best in class for speed to market. It's maybe 30, 40 days between us coming up with a product idea, assuming we have the NNCP for it, and can bring it to market. But yeah, going on too much of a tangent, each province has kind of its more redeeming features. And I'd love to see and perhaps explore the possibility of provinces sharing best practices. Because when I mentioned this to the folks in Nova Scotia, they said, you know what, we don't hear anything from any of the other provinces. That's something we could really make some improvement. And I just think this is a bit of a blind spot for the provinces now. It doesn't necessarily happen.
If I could add on that, I do find myself in the odd parking lot with BC government people handing out samples out of the back of my car. So it's not impossible.
No, and like in Nova Scotia, and this isn't necessarily the product call process, but you can't see so they have a new store that is their flagship store where they have what's called hero displays, but it's really just like the same merchandising that we're used to seeing in all the other stores. If you go to a normal store, you're picking out of a binder where they've handwritten most of these product entries in, and you can't see the product. They're in like boxes behind. So like there's so much room to improve, but there's like all these little pockets of genius within each province, and like we just need to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about sharing that information because I think it would make it a little bit more holistic across the country, right? Now, last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Aubin to the stage. Hey there. So, Jeff, I've already introduced you knowing you were going to come. So I've talked about your smoker farm. So you're just in time because you're next on the question after Aaron. Okay. So I'll give you time to have a little breather and catch up.
Perfect.
So, Aaron, since you spoke, so what are the few points that smaller producers need to keep in mind when coming to market? Like more on the provincial supply chain stuff. What do they need to understand and how to operate on that?
There's a loaded question. So first of all, my advice would be is to maybe engage with a processor before your product's ready. When you're war dialing guys like me and your product's finally ready, but you don't actually know how to get it to market, the biggest challenge for me as a processor is I don't necessarily have a SKU that's just waiting for your 30 kilos to enter. And therefore, if you really need to be paid like immediately, the best thing I'm going to be able to do is probably dump you in my value brand, which of course is not what you're looking for. So ultimately, if we can work together, I'll give you a great example. The month of May, I dropped 4 SKUs from 3 producers who all of their products were 1 week after COA release. And how did I do that? Because we fucking planned it since Christmas. And then it all showed up in May. And so ultimately, it looks like it all lined up and whatever, but it was so much paperwork and so much fun. And now I've got 4 SKUs in market that are a week old since COA, and they're as ripe and as beautiful as possible, and they're the best variation of themselves. I have to work with the liquor board. I have to negotiate on your behalf. I have to convince them. They might only have 4 SKUs available in that segment, and so if they've got 15 of guys like him and me, what is going to make you pop? So all of those things. So like really what I'm trying to say in long version is have a plan. We need to plan together as your partner and get you to market in a timely manner. Phoning me and telling me you've got a 29% that's been in your vault for 3 weeks is unfortunately $1 a gram. I can't help you unless you help me help you. So I want to plan together and then we can build together. So that would be my number one.
So very interesting, and Aaron comes again from the processing and helping the smaller guys bring their brand to market, right? And before I ask Jeff, you're up there. I just want to emphasize that this is an open conversation, so if anybody has a question at any time, because we're going to be talking about direct delivery, we're going to talk about exports and the different provinces, so you don't have to wait, just poke at me or raise your hand, and just fair warning, if I see like 2, 3 of you guys like going like this and agreeing about something, I'm probably going to squeeze to that table and say, what do you think? So I'll put you on the spot, because we do want some conversations. These are producers, and there's a lot of retailers out here, so we're trying to bridge that communication gap. So Jeff, Aaron just went about the branding and how they go about it and how they can help. You guys have done it all on your own, and I talked to you already, and you're actually not wearing a hat right now. So are you like completely off of work? Because you said you wear many, many hats, and that's kind of what I want to talk about.
Well, no, this is a promotional hat I'm wearing right now too. I'm still Instagramming. I'm doing all my same stuff. Getting known.
What does it take for a small producer like you guys? Like, how did you take your brand to market, and what does it take for a smaller company doing it all on its own?
Yeah, well, we're faced with so many challenges. At the beginning, we're lucky we paired up with JVCC, which really worked for us. We could trust them to get us purchase orders and whatnot in different provinces. So that was great, but I realized pretty quick that when I started growing that, hey, I thought, like every grower, I thought I grew the best weed in the world and everybody would run to it and flock to it. But that's not the case. There's so many choices when you go to a store. There's 300-400 choices. So how are they going to know Smoker Farms and what I do? So I have to remind them every single day, multiple times a day. I do social media 2 hours a day, man, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram, but I try not to show the struggles too much because positivity sells weed, negativity does not. So I just keep reminding everybody, we're here, we're here, we're here. And thankfully for me, I brought this strain from the black market that had a cult following there, and I was pretty adamant that I could create a market share for myself with one strain. When everybody told me I couldn't do it, I went, well, we'll just see, man. We'll just see. And I grow this particular strain a certain way that it ends up being a banger and everybody loves it. So even though I have all the social media presence in what I'm doing, if my weed sucks, it's going to sit in my vault. Nobody's going to want it either, man. But it's a constant grind of just letting people know what you do. And trying not to get in trouble with Health Canada, which I am right now. They have a problem with me. They say I'm creating a lifestyle brand, and it's not going to be great, but I can't shut up, man. I can't stop. I have to continue. I still feel like I'm being persecuted. I still feel like what I'm doing is illegal, which a lot of growers still think, man. The banks won't touch us. Nobody will kind of touch us, so it's like we're all on our own, man, and there's no help down the way. Well, I guess there's a bigger canopy space now they're talking, but that's a bunch of bullshit too, man, because we're all broke. We don't have money to put more money into a failing industry.
So social media, so you're in trouble with Health Canada, but I like what you said about you're spending a tremendous amount of time marketing your own, right? Like you're really pushing and using the social media. I'm terrible at social media, so I'm not going to start listing like which one's the better one or not. But have you been kicked off of it? I know there's on Instagram, some people get kicked off periodically or locked out or whatever the hell it's called.
I had my account suspended for about a week. A couple years ago, I begged for forgiveness, and they gave it back to me. But before I started this legal grow thing, I was not a social media guy because I was considered a drug dealer. So there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no nothing. Just anonymity, man. Have the blinders on, and now it's a new world for me that I can tell everybody what I do. You know, we were trapped behind the curtains for so long, just going, we can't tell anybody what we do. I had to make up all these fake jobs and what I did for a living, and hopefully people would believe it. I'm going to tell you, a lot of my grow places I had, there was no snow on the roofs, and I was surprised nobody commented on that back in the day. It's growing weed, man.
So Walker, do you have a perspective on that?
Just a couple of things. One, I think it would be a shame for you to show that much love to your plants without calling out the MK Ultra that's getting all the traction out there. So if you haven't tried it, please. And number two,
Appreciate.
Something that was just mentioned that has been emphasized to us by the OCS that was surprising is that they are advocating for us to lean into our kind of flagship genetic, whatever that may be, whether it's an MK Ultra, a Rainbow Driver, whatever is your flagship, that is likely to drive the majority of your revenue. And we thought, wait a second, most of our sales seem to come from new products that just dropped, like the new product Halo. Let's take a closer look. And if you look at Pure Sun Farms, majority of their sales come from their Pink Kush. If you look at each of these major brands, the majority of their sales come from a flagship genetic, and that tends to be what a lot of the stores will carry. We have challenges where we go into a store and we say, hey, so you got the Rainbow Driver, do you want to carry the Purple God or something else? They're like, kinda. It's not as good as your Rainbow Driver, though. So they're kind of in the mindset of picking the Rainbow Driver or the MK Ultra from each brand and having that on their shelves. And so as much of an allure as there is for a producer to generate many different products, there is a substantial amount of value to focusing in on what you're doing extremely well.
That's
Good point.
very good point. Thank you. But also very interesting because I do a little bit of trading internationally and stuff like that. And what's the biggest thing in the new emerging countries is they want the newest, exclusive, all the new stuff. And I'm like, but the tried, true, and proven stuff is the good stuff that we've refined over the years. And there seems to be a different interest when it's exports compared to what you just mentioned. So a very interesting point, which brings me to Zach. You mostly do exports,
Yes,
and that's
correct.
how your company built. And I know you do some direct delivery, and you're looking at that, but maybe we'll keep that for the next question. So why did you decide to do exports, and are there challenges compared to, doing it in Canada?
Yeah, I went into exports because I had a prior relationship with someone that was engaging in distribution internationally. I brought them some samples of what we had grown with their ACMPR facility, and then they just sort of worked with us to pick some genetics they want us to grow for them. I'd say for the difficulty of sales, I think the export market's a lot stronger. We haven't had any issues with that. So that part's been the easy part. I say just dealing with all the compliance and the compliance related stuff and actually getting it over there is probably the most complicated.
Because
At this time.
we've talked about some of the paperwork in the micros that people have mentioned that earlier this
This
morning.
is much more.
And
Much more.
That was my question.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
talking much more paperwork, even though.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and what are the repercussions if that paperwork is not exactly perfect?
You'll send a batch of product there and they have to throw it in the garbage. They won't even send it back to you.
They actually can't
You have
send
to
it back.
you have to test it here. Like you can go. I've heard a lot of stories of products that they've bought, tested by a lab here, and didn't match spec there, and then they had to throw it in the garbage.
Because it's too expensive to bring back, and then you have to redo all that paperwork,
They're not
right?
allowed to send it
No,
back.
there's
I don't
no
think.
import back to Canada. It's illegal.
You can't even bring back your product.
No. And then the GMP testing labs, the results are completely different than the local labs here too. So a lot of people have a lot of past data on lab results or certain things here, and then they go and engage in a contract based on what they think it's going to be, and then doesn't line up, and then they get into trouble.
So what do you do to alleviate all that? Like, how do you
I have to
juggle
test
that?
with Eurofins. Eurofins is a lab that they have them all over the world. They're a GMP lab, and the results are never quite as good as what you can get here for some of the metrics. And they can find things that they sometimes don't find here, and that's what you have to go off of. If you don't, you're in trouble.
That's interesting, because I know there's quite a few reputable labs here, but Eurofins have definitely, again, has come into conversation with our company as well. But High North is another one that definitely has upped their specs to be in the GMP world, I believe. And I'm
Yes.
sure there's tons of other labs as well. There was Blue Labs and things like that. Not to leave anybody out, right? But it's really, I think it becomes to which standards they check for in the receiving country, correct?
Yes, yeah, they have to be a GMP certified lab.
And which country do you play in?
My product ends up a lot in Australia, and it's in Germany a bit now too, and we'll be focusing more on Germany. But yeah, I know those two countries. I don't know if they take it from Germany and take some to the Netherlands or UK, but I think it will sort of start ending up there as well.
Any big differences between Australia and Germany in regards to like paperwork and certification, whatnot?
No, it's all the same type of thing. I don't deal with the nuances between the countries. I just need to make sure it's GMP compliant, and then gets over there, then they'll take it and package it from there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to your direct delivery and then your creation of brand for
Yeah, no worries.
BC.
Yeah.
Walker, you had something to add on the exports and things? Or?
No, not at all. We barely understand exports. I'm learning lots.
Okay, gotcha. I thought you had put your hand up for, okay,
I was
perfect.
just waving. Crowd.
So I know we said I would park the direct delivery with Zach for right now. I want to talk to you, Walker, about direct delivery versus central delivery in BC. Because for me, that's not a producer or a retailer or whatnot, I hear that's a 15% discount. Wow, that sounds great. Can you explain how it works for these non-BCers, or maybe shed some light to some of the BC folks as well? How it got created, and more important, what needs to change, what needs to get better?
There's one thing that really stands out in my mind. Could I get a real quick show of hands? How many people in the crowd know what direct delivery from BC is? Half, 60, 70%. How many people in the crowd know what the proprietary fee is that the BC charges for use of their direct delivery program? Seeing about a dozen hands, maybe 15. So I think we're going to try and change that today. So when the BC first rolled out the direct delivery program, the motivation for it was that it was here to help small batch producers be more competitive in the marketplace. And that's certainly something that I think we can all get behind. This would see benefits to shops like Sweetgrass and Smoker Farms and Wildcard and Royal Harvest, like the brands that we tend to want to see be successful in this industry. And when it was first rolled out, BC did two things, in my opinion, that were really, really important. Number one, they got out of the way of being the sole decision maker for what products can make it into the marketplace. Before direct delivery, if the LDB didn't want to carry your SKU, you did not have a path to market in BC. So being able to step out of the way and say, like for us, if we want to launch a direct delivery SKU, we send the LDB an email and 2 weeks later we have a SKU. It's that simple. Number two was they let us deal directly with the retailers. That means we can operate our own online store. We can provide customer service. We can get deliveries there a little bit quicker. Like there's a great opportunity for us to engage and build that relationship directly with the retailer. And for anybody who was around in 2016, 2017, 2018, this was one of the best aspects of our marketplace. And so here's the rub. We are allowed to do the work. We are not allowed to be paid for it. I'm seeing a couple jaws drop. So we're not allowed to do the work. Sorry, we are allowed to do the work. We're not allowed to be paid for it. We can do the job of operating that online store and fulfilling orders, taking orders, managing payments, and all that kind of stuff. But the 15% markup that the LDB was previously charging for doing that job has now become a 15% proprietary fee. And this is something that I had to go look up. Like I went to business school, I've been around the block. I had no idea what a proprietary fee was. I looked it up and it's something that was literally made up. And so it's one of those things where the province saw an opportunity to help the small batch producers and made some really important steps in that direction, but it was a half step because by allowing the smaller producers to do the work, but not providing them with the benefit of that added sales, what you've done is you've increased their cost of sales. And with an increased cost of sales, I think that we can unanimously disagree. This does not make things easier for the smaller producer. And so this one element of the direct delivery policy has undermined the entire program. And if that can be kind of recognized and prioritized as such, I think that there's a massive opportunity to right that wrong and for direct delivery to be the regulatory crown jewel of BC, allowing for us to have small producers, small processors, and retailers get back to that relationship that they deserve to have.
How many of you was that a surprise? Because I heard it last week when I was talking with Walker, but I couldn't believe it. So anybody of you surprised that you're not getting the savings that you thought you were? I'd be Godsmack right now if I was a producer. So, Zach, I promised I'd come back to you. Since we're right into the direct delivery, so you've now shifted a little bit of your focus into the direct delivery model, trying to push a brand into Canada.
Yes.
Why now? Or do you agree with what Walker was saying? And is it strategic? Are you going to keep pushing it and growing it?
I'm more just having some fun with it because I'm in the situation where majority of my product is taken for a different market. The reason I wanted to get into it is more of an ego thing, just to have a bit of a brand in my my hometown, and just trying it out to see. I mean, if it continues to go in a direction that makes sense, we'll allocate more volume in that direction. But if it doesn't, then I'll just pull back and I won't continue pushing it too hard.
And were you aware of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So knowing that there's no real improvement, so.
But it allowed me to get something on the shelves very quickly without having to go get an actual central listing. That's where it's helped me, because if I had to do a central listing with small batches, it'd just be too much work. It wouldn't make sense. So it's allowing me to dabble and test things out. But I agree. I mean, I don't know why we're paying 15% where I've got a sales team hitting up stores to do the distribution, not the government.
But good point, though, kind of a baby step to test the product and market to see if you want to make the effort to go to the bigger market, right?
Yeah.
Aaron, you have something to say about that?
I was going to add a few other pinch points. It'd be really nice if retailers could pay with their credit card. Building out an online store and then asking you to wire me money or e-transfer me, it's kind of annoying. Plus, we now have to have infrastructure on our end to manage that stuff. And additionally, because we're a standalone processor, I mean, sometimes I have 2 pallet order to the LDB, and sometimes I have 4 cases to 3 stores. And my processing team mildly get frustrated with the 4 cases because it ends up the same amount of paperwork for the QA as the pallets. And so they end up trying to push it, another day or two. And then as a sales guy, I'm like, no, fuck, you got to sell. That store can't wait 4 days. Like, what are you doing? Ship it. And so there's some additional gaps. The 15% definitely will help. I'm not trying to say it wouldn't, but there's more gaps than that.
So I'd like, and Jeff, I'm coming to you, but I'd like to have a positive spin on the direct delivery. Like, besides, is it only the testing your market in the small batch to kind of get to know where you are? Like, why should I get into direct delivery then? Like, you guys have not convinced me at all.
I think it's exactly what Zach said. You don't get into direct delivery to make money, and that was kind of how this was marketed and proposed. You get into direct delivery because there's fewer barriers to access the market, and perhaps you want to access the market with something that's a niche SKU, but you think that if you can get some traction with that, you can earn a central delivery SKU. So it's certainly better than having no direct delivery at all, but they took like half. They made half the progress there, and they left the other half. They let us do the work, but they didn't let us get paid for it. They could let us get paid for doing the work. everything changes dramatically.
But I will say there's some champions out there, though. Joint Venture's done a really good job with their direct delivery, but so has a few others. Pure Fire, I happen to have Trellis, and I can see how well you're doing. And same with, Valahara Flour as well. So there are some champions.
Champions as in volume, right? So they got
they have
larger
good
volume.
store count. They're at 40, 50, 60 stores
So
for a
it
SKU.
offsets
Your 4-case paperwork.
Yeah. So, but I mean, different business models, right? So for my business model, my guys, my team, they're trying to focus on pallet, and then like our basically little things over here. So it's obviously it's not awesome for us, but
Yeah.
we're trying to figure it out.
Jeff,
Yes.
I know you have a slight different perspective, and I don't want to put you on the spot here because I was talking to you outside and you said, how's your interest in international and export? And right away you're like, hey, I won't turn my back on Canada. I'm loyal to Canada. So what do you have to comment on the exports? And then is that even affecting your business, or that's a whole different mindset for you next?
Yeah, that'd be a whole different mindset kind of for us. We're sticking in Canada. We hear stories about,
$7, $10, $12 a gram overseas. It never pans out. It always ends up with a low $3 shot, and I'm not going to turn my back on Canada. I'm building a brand here. Because if I go somewhere else internationally and I sell my weed there, and say if it doesn't work out, and then I try coming back to Canada with my weed, everybody's gonna be like, Smoker Farms, screw you, man. I don't want to buy your fucking shit. You left us, man.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid that we'd lose support from people here. And really, yeah, I want to supply weed to my country, man. I do. But if the numbers were high,
Here.
like 6 or 7, maybe it'd be a different story. But they're not, and I don't think they're ever going to get there for me. So I'm quite happy to stay here and build this brand.
And $6, $7, $8, $9 a gram, you say, I don't think it's going to happen for you, or that's what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't see that happening for a lot of people. And if you do have that market at $5, $6, $7 grams, go to it, sell as much as you can, and take full advantage of it, because it's not going to last. All these new emerging countries, it does the exact same thing. There's a high that hits really high, well, really high, higher than what it normalizes at. And I can tell you that these new countries, it's a lot faster than what's happening in Canada. Like Germany, the prices have tanked really fast in the last year. Walker?
Something that I think is worth pointing out, there's a lot of people who are in just position who aren't making that decision, who are saying, you know what, my business has got to take the top dollar for business reasons, and if we're going to get that from overseas, we're going to stop putting our products into Canada. And one of the things that's going to impact is the availability of quality. If all of the quality producers are going to get better money from overseas and are struggling to make ends meet, it's going to make sense for them to put their weed overseas, and the quality within Canada is going to reduce. And that's just something that we should generally be aware of when we continually push the price down on the market rate.
That's a very valid point. I mean, I'm, again, from New Brunswick, all our premium seafood does not land in Canada, right? It leaves right away. I still love my fresh lobster, and you guys probably love it too, but the better lobster goes Asian countries, it all leaves, right? So, and we still end up paying the high prices. But still known for seafood. You're right. You're known for poutine there in Montreal, don't worry. So Jeff, we talked about to the other panelists about like the different provinces that they deal with, but they're more on the larger scale and things. You're a micro producer. You do everything once again, all on your own. What are the similarities and the troubles you have dealing with the different provinces coming from a smaller producer?
Well, see, we started in BC first, and BC is pretty voracious, but there's a lot of good growers here in BC. We needed to get the Ontario market. If we didn't, we figured our vault would be full. We didn't think BC could handle consuming all of our weeds. So Ontario was completely an animal we needed to tackle. In BC, they talk about how many cases they sell in a week. In Ontario, they talk about how many cases they sell by the hour. Like, it's such a voracious market in Ontario, man. So, and Ontario is my home province. It's where I was born. So to me, it was mandatory to get my weed there, man, and to give it a try. And I was explaining to him earlier today about just weed and the weed sales and stuff. So we're a small micro producer. We have the ability to produce 300 to 400 pounds a year. Our vault has been empty for 2.5, 3 years now, but so is our bank account. I don't get it anymore, man. It doesn't make any sense to me. Our weed is in such demand, but there's so many hands in the cookie jar stealing money from us. Yeah, and when it comes down to, no, it's not stealing, but that's what it feels like. The government, it feels like they're stealing the excise tax. So it's a little complicated, man. And as the supply chain works, whenever we go from, say, a 3.5 gram to a 7 gram or a 14 gram, everybody gets to make the same money except the grower. It's always a phone call going, okay, there's going to be a price slope. You got to accept less money for your weed. And I'm like, well, come on, man. The government's at play. They don't get less money. The retailers don't want less money. It's always the grower that goes, okay, can we still afford to grow weed? We're not making as much money. It's a tight situation to be in, man. We're not doing this for free. It's a profitable business, but it isn't. Like,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
It isn't. Like they said, the canopy space is going up. Oh, who gives a shit about that, man? We don't have any money to invest more money into a business, and why would we want to when it's a failing industry right now?
I've heard that 3 times now this morning.
So it's a complicated scenario to be in, and this is my dream. We're in it deep, man. There's no backup plan. There's no exit plan for us. Just like there is for a lot of small producers. They put everything into it, man, to hope it's going to work. And here we are in this industry going, 4 years in, and I'm still feeling broke.
So I don't want to steal the thunder from David's panel next, because he's going to be talking more about the retailer's side of things. But that's an interesting comment that was just said, and nobody in the audience has something to say or comment on saying, hey, my margins as a retailer is extremely tight. Yes, we finally have a couple of people. She raised her hand before, so I'll come right back to you, Michael. Thank you. Please, your name and who you're with, please.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Pooja. I'm with Cropsify. My question kind of goes along with what Aaron was saying about exporting and how you want to stay within Canada. I'll try my best to form things in a proper sentence here, but my question is, do you think that with more and more producers and processors exporting their cannabis for more premium price where they can get it, do you think that the industry as a whole, as a general, is leading more and more towards export central within Canada, where we're constantly exporting and that's where the money's at? Or do you think that with time and enough regulations being lifted from Health Canada, that maybe within time we will see the same kind of money, same kind of volume, and not being broke after 4 years? Just had a question about that and see what the panel thinks about that.
Who's it to?
Anybody who wants to grab it.
I think it depends on regulations. If the regulations encourage domestic sale, then the businesses will adapt and move their product domestically. If pricing and regulations support export better than they support domestic sale, that's where our weed's going.
I second that. I'd rather be here if I could. I just think from where it is right now, it's easier for me to play abroad.
Even with the additional regulations and paperwork, it's still easier to do a deal abroad business-wise because of the price point?
Yeah, and just they're able to take more volumes. It's not as competitive, so when I bring a product that would be considered premium here, there's other good growers, there's not as many. So it's, not having a brand, say like yourself, I'm a nobody here. Going in over there, you come in with some good weed, it's a lot easier to break in. And my team is comfortable to handle the regulatory stuff, so we feel more comfortable to handle that than try to break into a bunch of new stores across the country when no one knows us. And so we chose that path. It's working out so far to at least keep us going.
Before I come to you, Michael, I just have a quick question, still for Zach. Do you brand internationally, or do you just white label?
I have been white labeling, but I'm going to be starting some branding in Germany. So that's the next step.
By demand or strategic?
Yeah, people have been approaching me. I don't know how they found us because we don't even have a website until a month ago. But yeah, mixture of both. I've been approaching, they've approached me. So I'm going to give it a go. Okay. I think the main thing we're doing now is just trying some different avenues out to see what it's like, so I can really say for sure what works and what doesn't.
Because I believe Australia is quite strong on keeping the brands, especially the Canadian brands. They use that as marketing.
Yeah, Germany especially.
Okay, great,
yeah.
great. Another question we had. Michael, you had a question?
No, just, I guess, a comment and a question that relates to why this industry, whether it's retail or on the LP side or the micro, our margins aren't high enough. That's why we're not making money. And we keep pointing to external factors that we don't control. What we do control is our pricing and the margins that we are able to make. And so I think we need to look in the mirror as an industry a little bit and recognize that in order for us to make money, we have to figure out ways to make margin in the businesses with the level of taxes and paperwork and all this other BS that we deal with. That doesn't, we can complain about it, but we have to figure out how to make money with the businesses the way we can control them as an industry.
Yeah, I agree.
Very well said, and I think I saw quite a few nods out here. And honestly, Michael, to that point, when we do trading of cannabis, it's always a two-sided negotiation, right? So the buyer is looking for certain specs, they're being very clear on what they want, and they usually are pretty set on price. And then we start looking at suppliers and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Okay, what can you get me for price? I'm like, no. What can you give me for price? Because you should understand your costs internally and be in that negotiating driver's seat. If you don't know your internal costs, how can you come back to a buyer that's cutting you by 10 cents maybe? 10 cents might make it or break it for you. But if you don't know, how can you participate? Because Aaron, I'm going right to you with this question.
Sweet.
Pricing. How do we go about pricing? And I think you know where I want you to go with this, because Jeff mentioned that his vault's empty and he makes no money.
Yeah.
So what do producers need to do when it comes to pricing?
So pricing is a fun one because we're always passionate about it, and obviously we all need money to survive. I will say, though, to his point there, doing everything you can to manage your COGS. I can't speak more to that. Like wherever you can save COGS, like. When I onboard inexperienced versus experienced cultivators, and they're telling me they're paying their trimmers 15 grand, because you're still paying them by the kilo, please stop. Please pay them a Starbucks wage, because honestly, there's not enough money to go around, so don't do that. While I work with the liquor board to get procurement, speaking to what he was talking about with the confusing and really a lot of Excel spreadsheets as it comes to all these different provinces. They will sometimes call you and say, I'm really interested in your product, but I say no to 80% of it, and while you priced it at $59.99 MSRP, I really need you to come in at $49.99 MSRP, and they're giving me 3 minutes to make a decision on your behalf. And if I say, hey, can I have 10 minutes so I can call them and talk to them first, the answer is no. So if
So are you saying you need all that information before you jump on that call?
I say in my experience with working with these liquor boards now for 7 years, I've been here a lot of times, and these like trying to predict, the category manager's next move. I've been able to do it quite a long time. So knowing what you want and what you can settle at are two important variables. And I can trust you. I always will go for the highest, price. But I also will warn that the highest price comes with the lowest velocity. And so, the highest price is not always the right marriage. There are a lot of SKUs in the ultra premium pricing doing 1.5 kilos a month. And if you're growing 30, 40, 50 kilos a month, you better have 15 of those SKUs. And if you don't, can we have a conversation around where we can land for the right velocity for your needs? So
where we can land price point wise?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can you have these conversations with the producers? Like how is that going? Are they understanding that? What's the pushback?
It's always fun. There's always a lot of pushback. So ultimately, like if I have micro A and he's got the best weed and best absolutely crushing it and deserves ultra premium, but has a 3 kilo run rate, if he's monocropping that with one strain versus another guy who's got a subpar quality against him, willing to come down 50, 60, 70 cents, and also has 6 genetics, I'm going to sell all 30, 40, 50 kilos of his, and I'm going to sell 3 or 4 of yours.
Only if, to your first comment, they understand their cogs. And
But they have to understand their cogs, and
they
you
know where
have-
to have to take the hit, is essentially.
Yeah, but and like we have cogs too as a producer. I have to pay your excise up in advance. If I'm working with the OCS, I don't get paid for 60 days. Yet the CRA wants their money every 30 days. And if you're really successful and we sell out in 2 weeks and I load another in and then I sell out in 2 weeks and I load another in, I'm still not getting fucking paid. And I still owe the CRA over and over and over again. So it gets really complicated.
So payment terms, that's a whole other conversation too, though.
Yeah.
There's
So
too
to
many
speak to
variables for
Jeff's
that.
like bank account is empty. Like actually, the more I sell, the more I can't find the money.
Yeah, the old cannabis catch-22.
But the balance
Walker-
sheet says I'm up 450%, so that's
Yeah.
good.
As someone who's had quite a few of these conversations with the LDB around, your price should be X instead of Y. Earlier on, I got the impression, and maybe I was just projecting, that they were trying to grind us down on price, that they were kind of doing what was in their best business interest or something along those lines. And after having gone through this cycle several times with them, that really doesn't seem to be the case. When they say, hey, we think that you should reduce the price on your product because we don't think it's going to sell through, almost every time they've said that, is exactly what's happened. And so I've learned to trust them on this kind of stuff, and that they are, at least in my experience, much more interested in being business partners than treating you like a customer. As
They're
someone to
using
extract
data.
cash from.
Sorry to cut you off, but they're using data, so they're not wrong because they're looking at more data than you can ever see.
And they don't give it away either.
No. So sorry, you can keep going.
Unfortunately,
But
had
the
the
data
conversation.
is important, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's no direct planning for data and whatnot, right? So before, I'm actually going to target a audience member, but before we get to that, I'd like to ask the panel their opinion on Farmgate. Is that something that you guys are interested in looking at? Why and why not? So why?
It doesn't make sense to me, and I could be way off base on this, but it doesn't make sense to me to invest several $100,000 of money that we don't have to create a retail store that is probably not going to have very much traffic, when the whole idea of Farmgate was to emulate the wine tasting system that requires some level of indoor, if not outdoor, consumption. And so it seems like there's at least 2 or 3 more pieces of this that need to be figured out until it's a viable business opportunity for an industry that already doesn't have any capital to invest.
Interesting. Jeff, can I go smoke a joint in your backyard?
Oh, I do all the time. I'm not allowed to show it on camera anymore, according to Health Canada, but I do all the time. But for me, the Farmgate thing, we're in a rural area in the middle of nowhere, kind of, so it doesn't make any sense for us to do it either. But I find it a great security risk. I don't want all these strangers knowing where I live, coming on my property and sniffing around. Can't have it. Never going to happen for me.
Cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination, yeah, it's not, maybe it's going to be viable for some people, but
What?
no.
You don't want like these nice tourists dressed up with their
No.
sun hats and glasses and the
No.
cameras walking through your crops and
They're
be
all
like,
going,
oh,
wanna come and
wow,
Like you're
this
gonna
look
is
at the
wonderful."
plants. No. We give the
Okay.
odd people tours here and there, but
Zach, any intentions of opening up the farm to?
I haven't thought that far. But
No.
It doesn't sound that appetizing.
So here's where I'm going to target somebody from the audience, and I don't remember their name. David, are you around? No. They're the ones who got the first Farmgate license. So am I getting warmer? Ding, ding, ding. So not to put you too much on the spot, but you guys decided to go that route. And do you agree with them? Are you like in a rural area where you're not going to get traction, or why the decision to take on that? And congratulations, by the way, being the first ones.
So yeah, they're 100% correct. If you're not in a spot where you got commercial traffic, it wouldn't be viable. So the reason we did it is because we actually are on the Trans-Canada Highway. So right in Salmon Arm, right on the highway. We got our facility right on the highway. It made sense to actually open up a store in the same spot where we do our cultivation. The problem we're having is, as everybody knows, we can't advertise. So getting the people in the store is the problem. Once the people are in the store, they love the product, and then they come back.
Zero advertising about your Farmgate store?
Correct. No, we're not allowed to say what our name is. We're not allowed to say CANNA. in advertising.
Is that a bylaw thing, or what is that?
That's actually the registry. That's just the way it is with
Okay.
Canada and everything.
So, very strategic, because I know Salmon Arm, even though I'm from New Brunswick. I actually worked in Tappan, BC for a couple of years. Yeah, Skimican Nursery, Skimican Lake. Yeah, I worked there for a couple of years. So how is that done for your business, your brand? Like, has that increased the brand, or it's all about money, dollars amount because of the volume that you increased?
It's definitely increasing the brand. The brand has gotten better just because people are starting to know about us. But again, like I said, the problem is you can't say who you are. And that's where they've got us really tied off. The other problem is it's $10,000 fee just to even start, and you don't no guarantee whether or not you even get the license. So there's a lot of stuff because we're the first ones to do it, nobody really knew. I'd ask questions, they couldn't answer them. They didn't come out with a handbook until 6 months after we're in business. So, like, how are you supposed to know how to run your business when they don't even know what they're doing, right? And the biggest problem I have with this is they charge us 15% on the product that comes out of the back of our facility to the front of the store. They still make 15% of the BCLDB. So that's crap.
So, very same kind of hook and sinker of the direct delivery. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm learning a lot today. I'm a producer guy, so I talk cultivation all the time, and I always, kind of complain and always say the same things, that my costs are this, and it's not us that are affecting all this, but it is obviously clear with these conversations there's so many different factors that come into play, and we can't point the finger at each other, I don't think, because it sounds like we're all in this together. Whether we like it or not, we're all sleeping in the same bed, and we're all sharing the same piece of pie at the end. So I don't know what the magic solution is, how we all get along, or how we coordinate, or how we all make sure we have an equal piece of the pie. But Aaron, I'm going to throw it at you. What are the biggest mistakes from the producer side of things in regards to that? Like, what is stopping this? Because we've heard about, some costs, and then, some light finger pointing at retail, or light finger pointing at taxes and all that stuff. There are things that are uncontrollable. What are the biggest mistakes that micros, smaller companies are doing within the market?
Okay, so my perspective is going to come from a standalone processor, which, means I got to work with lots of other people. So we all are focused on our own business. We live in our own silos, and we forget to look around the world. And you're all growing the best weed. I know every one of you has absolutely the best weed I've ever seen. But that being said, unfortunately, passion doesn't have a price, and quality is technically expected. So ultimately, one of the biggest gaps is we're stuck in our silo, and because we're stuck in our silo, we're not planning, we're not properly, I used to grow weed in the 90s. I used to do the same thing. I walk in a grow room like, holy fuck, there's like 30 pounds in here. And then there'd be 18, and I'd be pissed off at the 12 pounds that I didn't get, that didn't actually exist in the first place. So ultimately, like, poor planning is something that really, I have OCD. I need to plan. I need to sort this out. I need to forward guidance. We got a lot of Excel spreadsheets to do together. If you want BC, Alberta, and Ontario, I can get you in BC in 7 weeks, starting this Friday. I can get you in Ontario like fucking next year, and and Alberta like just before Christmas. And when are you going to get paid? When I get paid. So, and I don't mean to be so facetious. I had a couple beers before we got here, but like, ultimately, I want you to get paid. Trust me. I want you to get paid. I want my team to get paid. We all got bills. So ultimately, I need a plan with you. So like, let's break bread, figure out some stuff. I have an awesome worksheet that like we can pump in SKUs and some velocities, and we can get to the end of the rainbow, but we do have to be patient. And luckily, BC is actually the fastest, and believe it or not, they actually pay us the fastest, even though it still doesn't feel like it's enough. Once you get to Ontario, you realize how much you hate Ontario. So, but at the same time, how much you need Ontario. So what do you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the big beast, right? So, in short, is talking to your supply chain and coordinating and getting to a better plan.
Absolutely. And then, look, I love you all, and we're all passionate, but let's like put passion aside and ego aside. And I'm not insulting you when I suggest some numbers that aren't your favorite. I'm trying my best, but we've got to get to a run rate that works for you. We can get some premium in there, of course, but if you want to live on a 1.7 kilo SKU, then by all means, that's your prerogative, and I'll give you that. But
Yeah.
if you want to sell all your weed, we got to do a blended rate of a variety of different things, and we can walk through together on that and find a solution.
So empty your vault, but put money in your bank account
Yeah.
compared to Jeff.
Yeah. We'll try. He's doing great, though.
Just Walker quickly, and Jeff, I'm coming to you actually. Walker, just an extra comment on that.
I think Jeff is doing the right thing, and to some degree what Aaron is talking about. I know I've had a lot of these conversations, similar conversations. It's like, I grow the best weed, it fetches the highest price, now go figure it out for me. And like, you try and it just doesn't happen because everyone else is saying the exact same thing. The growers that I've seen the most success from are the ones who realize that this is a shitty market and that we're gonna have to take a hit in order to kind of keep things moving, and that we should sell what's in our vault at whatever price we can get, because that vault's gonna fill up next month and the month after and the month after, and the worst thing that you could do is let that stuff sit in your vault, age, and fetch a lower price for it.
And I will also add to that, if you price too high and then you've got to file the paperwork to bring it back down, by the time that process happens, the market's already doesn't trust you, and that new price is no longer the right price. And so the product will continue to get worse. And so you only get one time to make a first impression.
So I really like what you just said there. Understanding where you need to price yourself so that it moves, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So if you are premium flower, awesome. Be in the premium category, charge your $40-$45. But if you're not, you should have the humbleness, I guess, to say, I'm not at that level.
There's
this is where I
always
am on
another
this
harvest
crop.
and a
Correct.
procurement cycle every 2 weeks in BC. We can get you a premium later.
How does that make people feel in the audience about, like, we're telling you guys, like, great, you have $3 weed, awesome, but you have also $1.50, $1.25 weed. Do you guys agree with that? Nobody's gonna dare, eh?
One of our strategies in the marketplace, and I think it's a big part of our early success, was the caliber of weed that we were growing. I thought was top tier. I thought that you could put Woody Nelson products beside, whether it's Simply Bare, Royal Harvest, Black Market, etc. But in talking to the retailers and talking to consumers, there was not a lot of people that wanted to pay like $45-$50 for an eighth, including tax, and recognizing that the consumer is in an extremely price-sensitive time. Like, it's hard to make ends meet for everyone. We realized that if we wanted to kind of price ourselves at that higher end price point, we'd have a lot less volume. And for us, it made sense to come at the bottom end of that premium segment and try and win some hearts and minds and try and be more of a brand of the people. And I like to think we found some success doing that.
I'll also add that the market's actually starting to trust us now, so they're not buying 3.5 grams anymore. They're buying 7s, 14s, and 28s. And as they go up that ladder, you become $1.25, and that actually is premium because that's the price of a 28.
So comes back to an earlier comment, is it's not just selling your premium 1.7 kgs, it's selling the volume, right? And that's where you're going to end up being a little bit more successful. So Jeff, I already know you commented on that, the micro capacity. My question when I wrote it last week was like, do you think we should increase it? And what would that look like? So on Friday, they just announced that they want to increase it to 800. So different question. Would you look into it, and why not? You kind of answered, but according to what we're talking about with the other panelists, saying volume will start to equalize your production costs and maybe put you in a better situation. Is that something you would think of considering the investments and...
No, not really. This industry has to change a lot before I'm going to invest any more money into it. It just doesn't make sense right now. We're going to keep grinding out the way we do it, and we're very lean in everything we do, and we have to be to keep the lights on and to keep shit going here, man. But to invest more money right now, I don't think it's the right time, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years from now. Are the prices going to get lower for us producers? If they do, most of us are going to shut our doors and say, the hell with this, man. We're going to go back to the black market and have some fun again. you know.
That's already happened quite a bit, actually. I know a few stories that, I'm not going to repeat names or anything, but that's happened, and especially when the dispensary thing happened in Ontario with that whole lottery bullshit. The good, honest people decided to close all their dispensaries to be legit, and then they get into the lottery and they don't get in. They pretty much just turned around to the industry, flipped the bird, and then just went right back at it, right? So there is a point where we all need to make money once again, but we can't just keep driving the prices down for the other group to make money, right, Jeff?
No, for sure. I'm not looking to make millions of dollars growing weed here. We didn't set
it's gotta
ourselves
make
up
sense.
this way.
It
But
has to make sense.
we wanted to make a decent living that we could retire, but the way things are right now in the industry, and I say it often, if nothing changes in the industry, me and my wife will never retire. It'll never happen. It'll just never happen. We'll be working till the day we're dead. We don't have an exit strategy even because there's not enough money to think about an exit strategy. All we can do is keep grinding away like we do and hoping that some incremental changes will make it better. Is she staring at me, smiling? This is my dream again, and I've roped her into this.
She's got it all on
This is
camera.
going right on social media. You have a question? Janine has a question first, though. Sorry.
It's her anniversary today. I set her up with something already.
Oh, everybody, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Sherry.
We've been happily married for 24 years, but this October we'll be together for 30 years. So
That's nice.
we're
That's nice.
committed, and this process has not drawn us apart. It's drawn us closer, if anything. So having
nice
somebody
is
to
that?
support you like this, it's absolutely mandatory.
Beautiful. We have a question from Janine.
Hi, this one's for Aaron. I think that one of the things that we've run into as a processor is cultivators getting really angry at us when they see that their products are being sold in retail stores above a recommended 30% MSRP. And I think we need to keep in mind that the illicit market kind of settled on like $1,000 a pound for quads. And a lot of legal cultivators are still trying to get like more than $2.20 a gram. Whereas retailers used to double their margins in the illicit market, and now they're only getting to take 30%. So what do you have any input about retail margins or, how that's going or a bigger discussion?
Okay, so, I went from black market to alcohol to white market. So in alcohol, we had a very similar model. The privates have a different margin to the publics, which is something I'm used to. What I'm not used to is that was a mature market, so cannabis doesn't feel the same. I will say there's a client of mine, I might be wearing his hat right now, who went to a few privates and blew a gasket at what they were charging. But again, it's your store. You're free to do what you want. But the reality is, of course, you're also eroding its sell-through, because I will look at the pack-on dates and realize you still have my January batch, yet there's May batches in different stores. So ultimately, it's not my job to tell you how to run your retail store, but the challenge there is because, these friends of ours are former legacy, they actually assumed that I was taking more money because they can't wrap their heads around how it goes from them to where it goes all the way to you and what that whole pricing structure is. So ultimately, I speak in terms of government store margins because that's the forms that I'm filing. But ultimately, if you want to charge 50%, that's totally fine. But ultimately, do know if it's $60 at the government and it's already hard to sell, how is it going to sell at $75 at your store? So ultimately, it is a challenge. And how to communicate that to micros? I mean, first of all, the price has been the same the whole time. I didn't take any extra money. I wish. It is what it is. And there's some inconsistencies because they were finding some greenhouse organic was charged more than theirs at another store. So I don't know if I really answered your question entirely, but ultimately it is technically a free market. So the 30% is a recommended margin. I will say, throwing it out there, that the government is 25% of distribution at that 30% margin. So the rest of yours, the other 75, seems to be working, at least for a handful of SKUs. So just throwing that out there. But back to the beer market, They have the spec listings, which they would take, higher margins on because they're not in the government stores. And as a differentiator, there are those stores that branded themselves as stores that care about different reasons. So I'm going to this store, like Legacy Liquor Store in Olympic Village, not because I want Budweiser, but because I want really cool whiskey that I can't find somewhere else. And you're going to pay through the nose for it, but you know why? Because you can't find it anywhere else. So, think about that when you're doing your pricing structure.
Thank you. This is our time, but I think this was a really interesting conversation. We heard different aspects of different retail options and different sales channels, pros and cons, but I think what it comes down to, you just got to know where you want to play and how you want to play in that space, and you can make it, because we've heard, from these 4 panelists, the couple of folks out back doing a different model there. It does work if you're in the right circumstance and in the right mindset. But you have to understand where you are and where you need to play. And sometimes, I'll say it again, passion, I love passion, trust me. Passion is great, but it doesn't sell. It doesn't sell. I wish we could brand the Emerald Triangle as that oomph behind, but we just don't have that, And I've talked to somebody from Australia, and I'm like, sorry, but Adelaide outdoor weed? Like, is that does anybody speak of that as a premium? Like, does that give you anything? But he's so passionate about it, right? So really understanding your costs, how you operate, where you can take, not the hit, but where you can adjust your inventory and make sure you sell it. I think you need to sell your inventory. I think a couple of you has said it. There are ways to make money. You just have to know where you are. So thank you very much to all the panelists. Very, very insightful. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks.